Akasaka was a young woman known for her beauty, with the village of Umuagu becoming more enchanting because of her presence. The village, nestled between thick forests and meandering streams, was home to towering trees whose branches formed a canopy over the ground, offering protection from the sun's rays. The streams, which cut through the village like veins, were life itself, providing water to the villagers for their daily needs. It was to one such stream that Akasaka made her daily pilgrimage, a ritual she followed without fail. The walk to the stream was one of peace and quiet. The air was always cool, even during the hottest days. Akasaka would hum a gentle tune as she carried her clay pot, each step a rhythm that seemed to dance in harmony with the wind and the rustling leaves. As she passed under the large trees that grew beside the stream, she would pause for a moment to take in the serenity of the place. She had been coming to this stream since she was a child, and its beauty never failed to calm her mind. But one evening, as the sky turned a deep shade of violet and the sun dipped behind the trees, something changed. As Akasaka returned home from the stream, her path led her to a large, ancient tree by the water's edge, one that she often passed, but had never truly paid attention to. Tonight, however, a figure stood beneath the tree, partially hidden in its shadow. The man was tall and handsome, with broad shoulders and striking features. He had a deep, magnetic presence, as if he were not quite of this world. His skin was dark, his hair long and wild, like the night itself, and his eyes gleamed with an intensity that made Akasaka's breath catch. For a moment, she stopped in her tracks, unsure whether to approach him or keep walking. "Good evening," he said, his voice deep and smooth, like the flowing water of the stream. The sound of it seemed to echo in the air. Akasaka's heart skipped a beat. She had never seen him before, and yet there was something inexplicably familiar about him. She was always cautious of strangers, but there was something about this man, something she couldn't put into words, that drew her to him. "Good evening," she replied, her voice steady despite the sudden flutter of nerves in her chest. The man smiled, a slight curve of his lips that was both enigmatic and inviting. "I've seen you walk this way many times. I come here often, but never have we met." Akasaka felt a strange warmth in her chest. There was something about him that made her feel like she had known him for ages. She glanced at the darkening sky, unsure of why she felt this strange pull towards him. He was just another man. He was just another man. But something deep inside her whispered otherwise. They spoke briefly, and though Akasaka couldn't explain it, the conversation felt as if they had been talking for much longer than they had. He spoke of things she had never heard of, tales of distant lands and strange events, and for reasons she couldn't understand, she found herself entranced by his every word. His stories were so vivid, so full of life, they left her breathless. From that evening onwards, they met regularly beneath the tree by the stream. Each meeting was filled with more conversations, and with each passing day, Akasaka found herself falling deeper into his presence. She had never been one to trust easily, but with him she felt safe, as though she had finally found someone who understood her. It was almost as if they had shared a past life, as though their souls were drawn to one another by some force beyond her comprehension. One night, as the moon hung full and bright in the sky, Shigozi, this was the name he had told her, came to her home. The moonlight bathed her small hut in a soft, silver glow, and the air was still, heavy with the promise of something that neither of them dared to speak aloud. Their eyes met in the quiet of the night, and without words, they came together. It was the first time they had crossed the line that separated their friendship from something deeper. The touch of his lips on hers was gentle but intense, like the first raindrops of a storm, full of promise and longing. The night was filled with the sound of their hearts beating together, their bodies intertwined under the watchful gaze of the moon. When it was over, Akasaka lay beside him, her heart racing, She felt a sense of satisfaction she had never known, but there was also a strange feeling of unease, as if something had changed inside her, something she couldn't quite place. She had no words for it, only an overwhelming sense of yearning for something she didn't fully understand. The next morning, as the sun rose and the world came to life, Akasika felt different. Her body felt heavy, as though the night had left something in her, something permanent. She touched her stomach, her heart racing. Was it just the after-effects of the night's passion? Or was something else happening? Days passed, and with each one, Akasika grew more aware of the changes happening inside her. Her body, once firm and lean, now felt full in a way that made her nervous. She found herself growing tired more easily, and her appetite increased. But it wasn't just physical. There was a change in her emotions too. She thought of Shigozi constantly, her heart longing for him in a way that was both unfamiliar and all-consuming. She was drawn to him as if by some invisible thread, and yet he remained elusive. He always disappeared before dawn, never staying long enough for her to ask the questions that gnawed at her. Where did he go? Where did he live? Why did he never stay the night? Her mind swirled with questions, and the unease grew. She had heard of strange happenings in the village, rumors of spirits and ghosts that haunted the night. Tales passed down through the generations, but she had always dismissed them, thinking them nothing more than old wives' tales. Until now. As the weeks passed, Akasika's body began to show signs of a deeper change. Her belly grew round, and she realized, with a mixture of shock and disbelief, that she was pregnant. But with no knowledge of Chigozi's true identity, no knowledge of where he had come from or where he lived, how was she to understand what was happening to her? The weight of the situation pressed down on her. How had this happened? Why hadn't she questioned him more? She could no longer push the doubt away. Desperate for answers, she went to the tree where they had first met, hoping to find him. When she arrived, Shigozi was there, just as she had known he would be. But this time, the air between them felt different. There was a heaviness to it, a tension that hadn't been there before. He looked at her with those piercing eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice a mixture of concern and something that made her heart beat faster. Akasika swallowed, her voice trembling. "I'm pregnant. I don't understand. Where do you live? Where did you come from?" Shigozi was silent for a moment. Then he gave her an address. It was a place she didn't recognize, a place that felt as distant as the stars themselves. "Go there," he said quietly. "You'll find the answers you seek." But as Akasika stood there, looking at the address in her hand, a sense of dread filled her heart. What was waiting for her at this unknown place? Was it a place of answers or something far more terrifying? Akasika, her heart pounding, sets off to find Chigozi's mysterious address. But the further she goes, the more her doubt and fear grow. She does not know if she is walking towards salvation or doom. As the shadows of the trees stretch long into the night, she realizes she may never be the same again. Akasika's heart pounded with every step she took. The world around her seemed to blur, her mind tangled in confusion and doubt. The address that Shigozi had given her was etched in her memory, but nothing about it felt right. She had expected something more, an extravagant house, a place where he would reveal his true identity. But as she walked deeper into the village, the homes around her became more modest, the dirt road less traveled. She continued down the path, her feet kicking up clouds of dust with every step. The trees here were sparser, their branches leaning away from the road as though afraid of something that lay beyond them. Akasika felt the weight of the silence pressing down on her, the usual rustling of the leaves absent, replaced by a stillness that made her skin crawl. She couldn't help but wonder if she was heading towards something other than an answer, perhaps toward a fate that had already been decided for her. But she pushed the thoughts aside. Shigozi had told her to come here. She had to see it through. Finally, the path opened up to a small clearing where a modest house stood. It was a humble structure, but well kept, an anomaly in a village where homes were typically made of mud and thatch. The walls were painted a soft, weathered yellow, and the garden surrounding the house was filled with vibrant flowers that seemed to bloom brighter than anything she had ever seen. There was an inviting warmth about the place, but that same eerie feeling lingered. Akasika hesitated for only a moment before walking up to the door and knocking. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had just stepped into something far more complicated than she had imagined. The door creaked open, and an elderly woman appeared. Her hair was a soft grey, tied back in a neat bun. Her face lined with age and wisdom. She wore a simple dress that reminded Akasika of the ones her mother used to wear when she was a child, modest, unpretentious. "Yes?" the woman asked, her voice gentle yet firm. I'm looking for Shigozi," Akasika stammered. "I was given this address." The woman's eyes flickered with something Akasika couldn't read, and for a moment, a tense silence filled the air. "Shigozi?" the woman repeated, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You must be mistaken." Akasika's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? Is he here?" The elderly woman stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in, child. We'll talk inside." Akasika followed her into the house, her mind spinning. The inside of the home was modest yet cozy, with hand-woven rugs on the floor and simple wooden furniture. The air smelled faintly of herbs and incense, adding to the atmosphere of mystery that seemed to permeate the place. As the woman guided her to a small wooden chair near the hearth, Akasika took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The woman sat down opposite her, her eyes studying Akasika with an intensity that made the young woman uncomfortable. "Now, tell me why you've come," she said, her voice soft but steady. Akasika felt a knot form in her stomach, but she pushed through it. "I've been seeing Shigozi. He's the father of my child. I came because he gave me this address. He said you would have answers for me." For a moment, the woman said nothing. She simply stared at Akasika, her gaze cold and unreadable. Then slowly she spoke. "My son, Shigozi, has been dead for 5 years," she said, her voice thick with sorrow. Akasika's world seemed to tilt. She blinked, unable to process the words that had just left the woman's lips. What do you mean?" "No, that can't be true. I saw him just weeks ago." The woman's expression remained unchanged. "It's true. Shigozi died in an accident 5 years ago. I buried him myself, right here in the village. He was a good boy, kind and full of life. But he was taken too soon." Akasika shook her head, her thoughts swirling in a storm of disbelief. "This doesn't make sense. I don't understand. I've seen him, talked to him, loved him. How could he be dead?" The woman reached out slowly, her hand resting on Akasika's. "You have to understand, child. Some things are not what they seem. There are forces in this world that we cannot understand. Shigozi is no longer here in the way you think." Akasika pulled her hand away, her chest tightening. "No, this is a mistake. You're lying. This must be some cruel joke." Her voice wavered with panic. "Where is he? Where is Shigozi?" The elderly woman sighed, her eyes softening with a deep, sorrowful understanding. "I wish I could explain it to you, but it is not so simple. Shigozi's spirit still walks among us, though his body is no longer here. What you have experienced, what you have felt, was not his flesh, but something else. A manifestation, perhaps. A shadow of the man you loved." Akasika felt the blood drain from her face. A manifestation. What was she hearing? The woman stood up slowly, her frail body moving with surprising grace for someone her age. I will show you, Akasaka, the truth, but I cannot promise that it will be easy to bear. She led Akasaka to the back of the house, to a small garden that seemed to have been untouched by time. There in the center was a mound of earth, freshly turned. A simple wooden cross stood at the head of the grave, and beneath it, Akasaka could see the faint outline of a grave marker, though the name was worn and faded. This is where my son rests, the woman said, her voice a mere whisper. But his spirit was not meant to leave. It lingered, attached to this world, searching for someone perhaps. And then he found you. Akasaka's knees buckled, and she collapsed to the ground, her hand pressing to her chest as her mind reeled with shock. The idea of what the woman was saying was too much for her to comprehend. Shigozi was dead. But how had she been so blind? Why had she never questioned the strange things about him? The way he never stayed the night, how he always disappeared before dawn. Her thoughts were interrupted by the elderly woman's voice. Softer now. I told you that some things in this world cannot be understood. But I can tell you this Shigozi was not the one who brought you here. It was something else. Something darker. Akasaka stood, shaking. What do you mean? What's happening to me? What's this child inside me? The woman turned her gaze toward the sky, as though seeking an answer in the heavens. It is not just his child you carry, Akasaka. It is something far older, something more powerful. The spirit that touched you is not one to be trifled with. And now, you must face what comes next. Akasaka, trembling with fear, turned to leave. But the woman's voice stopped her. The child you carry is no ordinary child, Akasaka. It is the key to a power you cannot yet understand. And you will need to make a choice before it is too late. The night after her visit to Chigozi's mother was one of torment and unrest. Akasaka lay awake on her raffia mat, staring at the ceiling as the moonlight spilled through the small cracks of her window. Every sound outside, the croak of frogs by the stream, the whisper of the wind against her thatch roof, the occasional cry of a night bird seemed louder than usual, sharper, almost haunting. Sleep teased her, but fear kept her awake. She turned from side to side, her mind spinning with the woman's words. My son, Shigozi, has been dead for 5 years. The sentence echoed in her mind like a curse. How could that be true? She had seen him, touched him, felt his breath on her skin. She could still remember the warmth of his hands, the way he smiled, the sound of his laughter. Everything about him had been real, painfully real. Yet, the grave behind that house was there. The woman's tears were real too. When dawn finally came, its light did nothing to chase away the shadows in her heart. She rose, her body heavy with exhaustion and dread, and sat quietly beside her water pot. Her thoughts were scattered like dry leaves in the harmattan breeze. The idea that she had lain with a spirit was too much to bear. And yet, deep down, she knew there was truth in it. By midday, she could no longer ignore the pull in her chest, the feeling that something unfinished awaited her. Against her own fears, she decided to return to the old woman's house. She needed answers that only the mother of the dead man could give. The road back to the woman's house seemed longer than before. The trees loomed taller, their shadows darker. Even the birds were quiet, as though they too were wary of where she was headed. When she finally arrived, the old woman was already standing outside, as though she had been expecting her. You came back, the woman said quietly, her eyes studying Akasaka with an unreadable expression. I couldn't sleep, Akasaka admitted, her voice low and trembling. I need to know the truth. You said your son was dead, but I saw him. I touched him. He was alive to me. The woman sighed deeply and motioned for her to come inside. "You are not mad, my child," she said, as she closed the door behind them. "You saw what you saw. You felt what you felt. But Shigozi was never meant to remain in this world." Akasaka frowned. "What does that mean?" The old woman moved slowly toward a wooden chest in the corner of the room and opened it. Inside were small clay pots, cowrie shells, and folded pieces of old cloth. She took out a small wooden carving, an effigy shaped like a man holding a staff. "My son," the woman began, "was born different. From the moment he drew his first breath, strange things surrounded him. The night he was born, a great wind swept through the village, blowing out every lamp. The elders said he was marked chosen by spirits. As he grew, he began to see things others could not. He spoke to shadows, to voices no one else heard. He said they were friends from the other side." Akasaka listened, her heart thudding faster. "Shigozi was not ordinary," the woman continued. "He was born to walk between two realms, the world of the living and the world of the dead. The priests called him a bridge child, a messenger between spirits and men. He was destined to live a short life, for his soul did not belong fully to this world." Akasaka swallowed hard, her palms slick with sweat. "So, he was a spirit even when he was alive?" "In part," the woman said. "He was both. When he died, his spirit did not pass on completely. It remained trapped, bound by an ancient pact. There are things in our lineage-old agreements made long before you or I were born. Chigozi's soul was meant to fulfill one last duty before he could be free." Akasaka's breath hitched. "And that duty was me?" The woman's gaze met hers, sad but certain. "Yes, you were chosen. He came to you for a reason." Akasaka's voice cracked as she spoke. "Why me? I didn't ask for this. I didn't know who he was." The old woman's eyes softened. "No one ever asks for destiny, my child. It finds you when the time is right." She paused and reached out, gently placing a hand on Akasaka's stomach. "The child you carry is not a curse. But it is not ordinary either. It is the bridge just as Shigozi was. A being meant to unite two worlds." Akasaka trembled. "So this child is half spirit?" The woman nodded slowly. "Half spirit, half human. A child of both realms." For a long while, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the faint crackling of the fire in the hearth. Akasaka's thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion and terror. Everything she thought she knew about love, about life itself, had been turned upside down. Finally, she asked in a whisper, "Can I see him again? Please, just once. I need to ask him why. I need to know the truth from him." The woman shook her head sadly. "You cannot see him again, Akasaka. His time here has passed. To call him again would break the laws of balance. It would bring great danger upon you and the child." "But," Akasaka began, her voice breaking, "he said he loved me." The woman's eyes glistened with sympathy. "Perhaps he did. Spirits feel deeply too. But love between the living and the dead can never last. It always comes with a price." Akasaka lowered her head, her tears falling silently onto her lap. "Then what am I supposed to do?" "You must prepare," the woman said softly. "The child will reveal the truth in time. And when that time comes, you will understand why all of this had to happen." That night, Akasaka returned home, her body heavy with sorrow and confusion. The full moon hung high above the village, casting a silvery glow over everything. The familiar path home now felt strange, as though she were walking through a dream. She lit a small lamp when she entered her hut, its flickering flame dancing against the walls. She tried to eat, but her stomach churned. She tried to pray, but no words came. Finally, she lay on her mat, her hands resting gently on her growing belly. As she drifted into uneasy sleep, the sound of the wind outside began to change. It rose and fell like a whisper, soft but insistent, until it became a voice one she knew all too well. Akasika. Her eyes fluttered open, but she couldn't move. The voice came again, clearer this time, familiar and soothing. Akasika, do not be afraid. It was Shigozi. Her heart leapt. She turned her head, and there he was standing by the doorway, bathed in pale moonlight. His face was the same, his smile gentle, but there was something different now. His form shimmered faintly, as though made of mist and light. Shigozi, she whispered, her voice trembling. How are you here? Your mother said. I know what she told you, he said softly, stepping closer. And it is true. I am no longer among the living, but I could not leave without seeing you once more. Akasika felt tears sting her eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you come to me if you knew you were gone? He knelt beside her, his hand reaching out, though she could feel only the faintest chill as his fingers brushed her cheek. Because I had to. You were chosen, Akasika. The bond between our worlds needed to be restored, and only through love could it happen. I don't understand, she whispered. You will, he said gently. The child you carry will show you. It will grow strong, and when the time is right, the truth will unfold. Tears rolled down her face. You left me with so many questions, so much fear. Chigozi's eyes filled with sorrow. I know, but my time is short, and the boundary grows thinner every time I cross it. If I linger, you and the child will be in danger. I only came to tell you that you are not alone. Please don't go, Akasika begged, reaching for him, but her hand passed through his fading form. He smiled, his voice soft as the wind. I will always be with you, Akasika. In dreams, in whispers, in the heartbeat of our child. You will never truly lose me. And then he was gone. The room fell silent, the air suddenly still. Akasika sat there, trembling, her heart torn between love and dread. She clutched her belly, feeling a faint movement, a tiny flutter beneath her hand. It was the first time she had felt it, and it filled her with both wonder and fear. Outside, the wind rose again, carrying the faint echo of his voice through the trees. The child will show you the truth. Akasika knew then that her life would never be the same. The path ahead was uncertain, and the world she thought she knew had shattered into mystery. But one thing was clear, whatever this truth was, it was coming for her. And when it did, it would change everything. The months passed, and Akasika's pregnancy grew more pronounced. Her belly swelled with life, a constant reminder of the mysterious child she carried. But as the days dragged on, so did the whispers in the village. From behind curtains and over fences, the elders exchanged knowing glances. The women in the marketplace spoke in hushed tones, their eyes flicking to Akasika whenever she passed. She had become the subject of every conversation, and while no one dared to speak directly to her, the atmosphere around her felt heavy with suspicion. The child inside her stirred with strange energy, as though it were aware of the world even before it had seen it. Sometimes Akasika would sit quietly, hand resting on her belly, feeling the baby move in ways that no human child should. There were moments when the kicks felt like gentle nudges, and other times they felt like tremors, unsettling and powerful. Her dreams were increasingly vivid, filled with voices, and sometimes she would wake to the sound of a soft whisper calling her name. It was Chigozi's voice, though far away, as if it was coming from the deepest part of her own mind. One night, during the season's fiercest storm, Akasika gave birth. The winds howled like restless spirits, and the rain poured in sheets, drumming against the walls of her hut. It was as though the earth itself was reacting to the moment, the air thick with tension, the world holding its breath. Her labor was long, the pain sharp, but Akasika's mind never wavered. Her focus remained on the child, on bringing him safely into the world. When the moment came, the cries of the newborn pierced the storm, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Akasika knew peace. The child was here. He was beautiful. His skin was smooth and dark like the midnight sky, and his face was a perfect reflection of Chigosi's features. His dark, intense eyes, though still unfocused and wide, held the same gleam that Akasaka had seen in Chigosi's when he gazed at her. The shape of his jaw was strong, like the man she had loved, and his lips were full, curved in a way that made her heart ache with longing. The midwife, a woman who had helped deliver many babies in the village, looked down at the child with awe. "A fine boy," she said, but there was something uneasy in her voice. "He's beautiful, yes, but there is something—" She trailed off, shaking her head as if she could not quite place the feeling that had settled deep in her chest. Akasaka held her baby close, feeling a strange, unexplainable sense of connection, as though the child was not just hers, but something much more. She kissed his forehead, feeling the warmth of his tiny body against hers. And in that moment, all the questions she had been carrying seemed to fade. The child was real. He was hers. He had to be. The villagers had begun to gather outside her hut, waiting for news. Akasaka didn't want to face them yet, didn't want to see the judgment in their eyes, but she knew she had to. As she stepped outside, holding her newborn son, the rain had ceased, leaving the village in an eerie calm. The villagers were waiting for her, their faces full of curiosity, fear, and something unspoken. Her mother, the only one who truly understood her, was among them. She took one look at the baby and gasped. "He looks just like Shigozi," she whispered, a hand going to her mouth, her eyes welling with tears. Akasika froze. Her heart lurched at her mother's words. She hadn't even noticed the similarities, the way his eyes glowed in the dim light, the way his features mirrored Shigozi's so perfectly. It was as if Shigozi was standing before them, reborn. Her mother reached out, trembling, to touch the child's face, her fingers brushing against his smooth skin. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Akasaka could only shake her head. "I don't know, Mama. I don't understand any of it." The baby gurgled softly in Akasika's arms, his gaze shifting from her face to the faces of the villagers. There was a moment of stillness, and then, to everyone's shock, the child's lips parted and he spoke. His voice was small, barely above a whisper, but it was undeniably human. The words, however, were foreign. They were like a melody, a language that Akasika had never heard. It was a soft, haunting sound, beautiful, but eerie. The villagers looked at one another, fear creeping into their eyes. The baby's voice echoed in the silence. The words were unintelligible, but there was a sense of meaning, a deep resonance, as if the child were speaking from some distant place, some forgotten time. Akasika's heart thudded painfully in her chest. She had heard that language before, the language of the spirits, the whispers in the wind, the same voice that had haunted her dreams, the voice of Shigozi. "I don't understand," Akasika murmured, her breath catching in her throat. "What is this? Why is he speaking like this?" The midwife stepped forward, her face pale. "It is not a good sign. A child born with the spirit of the dead within him. It means there is something unfinished, something left behind in the world of the living." The villagers, who had gathered in hushed silence, began to murmur among themselves. Fear rippled through them, as they remembered the old tales, the stories about spirits returning, the dangers of meddling with the world of the dead. Akasika's mother pulled her aside, her voice shaking. "This is not just Chigozi's son, is it? This child, Akasika, he's something more, something dangerous." "No," Akasika said. shaking her head. "He's my son. He's just a baby." But even as she spoke, doubts began to creep into her mind. The baby's voice, the strange way he moved, the way he had looked at her, there was something otherworldly about him. Something that didn't belong. That night, after the villagers had left, Akasaka stayed in her hut with the baby, alone. The room was dimly lit by the glow of a single oil lamp. She rocked the child gently in her arms, but the unease she had felt before returned, filling her chest like a cold weight. The baby slept soundly, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. But even as she gazed down at him, she could feel his presence, something ancient, something that was not entirely of this world. And then, just before she fell asleep, the voice came again. Not from the child, but from somewhere deeper within her. It was Chigozi's voice, distant yet so close, as though he was speaking directly into her soul. "Akasaka," the voice whispered, "do not be afraid. He is mine, but he is also yours. He is the bridge between worlds. And through him, you will see the truth." Tears filled Akasaka's eyes as she clutched her son to her chest. The storm had passed, but the storm inside her heart raged on. What had she brought into this world? What had Chigozi left behind? She didn't know, but she would soon find out. Because the child, the bridge between worlds, would show her the truth about love, life, and death, and nothing would ever be the same again. The following days were filled with whispers and a sense of unease. Akasaka could no longer ignore the fact that the child she had given birth to was more than just a boy. There was something otherworldly about him, a deep, ancient power that pulsed beneath his skin. And as the villagers watched him, they began to fear what he might grow into. But Akasaka knew one thing for sure. She could no longer turn away. The path had been set, and the truth was coming for her. Whether she was ready or not, the child would reveal it all. The months flew by, and with each passing day, Akasaka's bond with her son deepened. He grew quickly, far faster than any child she had ever seen. His eyes remained the same dark and intense, like Chigozi's, and his features were an exact replica of his father's. His hair grew in thick and curly, and his voice, though still soft, was filled with an unnatural wisdom. As the child matured, strange occurrences began to follow him. The animals in the village treated him with a quiet reverence, often following him with their eyes and even resting near him, as though sensing something unique in his presence. The wind would stir when he walked outside, and the sun seemed to shine brighter whenever he smiled. People would whisper that there was something otherworldly about him, but it wasn't fear they felt anymore, just a deep, abiding awe. The months flew by, and with each passing day, Akasaka's bond with her son deepened. He grew quickly, far faster than any child she had ever seen. His eyes remained the same dark and intense, like Chigozi's, and his features were an exact replica of his father's. His hair grew in thick and curly, and his voice, though still soft, was filled with an unnatural wisdom. As the child matured, strange occurrences began to follow him. The animals in the village treated him with a quiet reverence, often following him with their eyes and even resting near him as though sensing something unique in his presence. The wind would stir when he walked outside, and the sun seemed to shine brighter whenever he smiled. People would whisper that there was something otherworldly about him, but it wasn't fear they felt anymore, just a deep, abiding awe. Akasaka's love for her son was unwavering. Though the village had once looked at her with suspicion and fear, they now came to her for guidance. The boy, now named Olamide, had become a beacon of wisdom and peace. He seemed to know things that no child should, and when he spoke, people listened, as though his words carried the weight of ages. He had the calm demeanor of someone far older than his years, and his understanding of life and death made him both revered and feared. Akasaka spent many hours in quiet contemplation, seeking answers. Her heart longed for the truth. The complete truth about the child she carried, and the man who had once filled her heart. Was Olamide truly her son? Or was he something much more? Was he simply a gift from the spirit world? Or was he the result of something darker? In search of answers, Akasika began visiting the spiritual leaders of nearby villages. She sought counsel from the wise elders, who had long served as the keepers of ancient knowledge. But even they were hesitant to speak at first. The bond between the realms of the living and the dead was a delicate matter, one that few dared to discuss. One day, after months of searching, Akasika was directed to an elder living in the neighboring village of Omwaka. She had heard whispers of his wisdom, that he had the ability to see beyond the veil of this world. Desperate for answers, Akasika made the long journey to meet him. The elder's home was a small stone structure on the edge of the village, surrounded by thick trees and vines. The air around it was thick with the scent of herbs and incense, a calming mixture that seemed to ease Akasika's nerves as she approached. She had been told that the elder, known as Obina, was not like the others. His sight reached into the spiritual realms, and his words were laced with ancient truths. Obina was a tall, stoic man with deep-set eyes that shimmered with wisdom. When Akasika entered his home, he did not greet her with pleasantries. Instead, he looked at her with an intensity that made her feel as if he was peering into the very depths of her soul. "You seek answers," he said, his voice like the deep rumble of thunder, calm yet commanding. Akasika nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of the truth she had been avoiding. "I need to know who my son really is. What is he? And why was he born the way he was?" Obina studied her for a moment longer, then gestured for her to sit. "I have seen many things in my time," he said, his voice softening. "But what you ask is not simple. It is a story of love, death, and fate, one that stretches across the boundary between the living and the dead." He paused, allowing his words to hang in the air. The wind outside picked up, rustling the leaves, as if urging him to continue. "Your son, Olamide, is not a child like any other," he began, his tone steady but serious. "He is the product of an ancient ritual, one that binds the realms of the living and the dead together. His father, Shigozi, was no ordinary man. He was a spirit of being caught between the two worlds. He had been chosen for a task far beyond what any mortal could comprehend. And when he met you, Akasika, when he fell in love with you, their union created something extraordinary." Akasika's heart skipped a beat. She had always known that there was something different about her son, something unique. But hearing the elder speak the words aloud made everything feel more real and more terrifying. Obina continued, "Chigozi's spirit had fulfilled a long-standing pact. He was the messenger between realms, bridging the living world with the world of the dead. But his task was never meant to end in death alone. He needed to leave behind a legacy, a child who could continue his work, one who could truly exist in both realms. That child is Olamide." The words hit Akasika like a blow to the chest. She felt as if the ground beneath her was shifting, her world becoming unstable. "He is both of this world and the next," Obina explained. "His spirit is part of the cycle of life and death, and because of that, he possesses great power. Power that will allow him to bridge the gap between the living and the dead, to guide those who walk the line between the two worlds." Akasika could hardly speak. She had always feared that her son's abilities meant something more sinister, that he was cursed, or some kind of ghostly aberration. But now, she understood. Her son was not a curse. He was a part of a greater sacred purpose. His birth had been foretold by the ancients, a fulfillment of a prophecy that no one had understood until now. "But why?" Akasika asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why me? Why did Chigozi choose me to be his mother? I am no one special. Obina smiled gently, his eyes filled with compassion. You are special, Akasaka. You were chosen because of your heart. You have always possessed a connection to the spiritual realm, a sensitivity to the unseen forces that guide the world. Shigozi saw that in you, and he knew that together, you would raise a child who could fulfill the task that neither of you could do alone. Akasaka's mind raced as she tried to process everything. Her heart ached with the knowledge that she had been part of something much larger than herself. She had always believed that she was just a simple woman, a village girl, and yet she had been thrust into a destiny far beyond her comprehension. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. I don't know if I can raise a child who is meant to bridge these two worlds. What if he becomes something I can't control? Obina's gaze softened. Olamide will not be something you need to control. He will guide you. His purpose is not to harm, but to heal, to bridge the gap between life and death, to teach those who are lost how to find their way. But you must trust him. You must trust the bond between you and the bond between him and his father. Akasaka nodded slowly, her heart swelling with a mixture of fear and pride. She understood now. Olamide was not just her son. He was a messenger, a healer, a leader destined to help others find peace between the realms. When Akasaka returned to the village, she carried the weight of the truth with her. She embraced her son more fiercely than ever before, knowing now that his purpose was greater than any of them could imagine. As the years passed, Olamide grew into the leader he was meant to be. His wisdom was unmatched, and his presence brought peace to the village. People came to him seeking answers, guidance and comfort. He understood death like no other. He could speak to the spirits, and when someone passed, he was able to guide their souls to the other side, bringing peace both to the departed and to the living left behind. Though Akasaka never saw Shigozi again, she felt his presence in her son. Every time Olamide spoke, every time he looked at her with those same dark eyes, she knew that his father's spirit lived on within him. And though the path had been uncertain, Akasaka had finally found peace. The village, once filled with fear and gossip, grew to respect and revere Olamide. They saw him not as a child of the dead, but as a child of destiny. And in time, they came to understand the sacred bond between the living and the dead, a bond that was no longer something to fear, but something to cherish. Akasaka had raised her son, not in fear, but in love, and as Olamide guided the people with wisdom beyond his years, she knew that the mysterious spirit who had once claimed her heart had fulfilled his purpose. And so had she. Their story, once a tale of fear, became one of love, destiny, and spiritual connection. The village came to understand that death was not an end, but a passage, and that the living and the dead were forever intertwined. And in the end, Akasaka knew that her son was the key to understanding it all. Thank you for watching. Do well to subscribe for more African folktale stories. Thank you.